Hello, everybody, and welcome to USA Global TV and Radio. My name is al.cini, and I guess I'm filling in for the only wonderful Dr. Jacalyn, who's having a few technical difficulties. And while I'm sorry about that, and it certainly is a loss for our audience, this is my opportunity to reconnect with a terrific old friend of mine, Ian Turner, who is an expert on all things UK. And if you think we have problems here in the United States economically, economy-wise, well, we'll hear what he has to say about what's going on in the UK. So, Dr. Jacalyn, if you're pushing the buttons, we can bring Ian Turner in whenever you say. And there he is, the one and only.
Al, hi. It's great to be working with you again. I really admire, the quality of your work as well. And so it's, but you're quite right. Quite honestly, at the moment, I'm watching all the programs. Tomorrow, we have this fiscal review, it's called. In other words, it's how to put up stealth taxes. In Great Britain at the moment, the Conservative Party are in government at the moment. Basically, they are supposed to be low tax, high yield. And so I think that someone has stood on its head at the moment, because now we're high tax, low yield, and no prospects, I don't think at the moment, of getting much further.
This is such a great way to get the conversation started, because one of the things I want to explore is an old Ronald Reagan quote, which is he once was quoted as saying that the most terrifying words you can hear are "we're here from the government and we're here to help." Nothing is more frightening than that. And when you get a robust economy, as you have in the United Kingdom, as we have in the United States, the more tinkering that politicians do with it, the less robust it becomes. So the more they help, the more they try to adjust this by turning this knob and adjusting this lever to make this better, the more likely they are to make something completely unrelated, completely not better. And as a result, you end up with an energy crisis and an inflation problem. And I'm sure you're experiencing all of that there. Maybe just what's that like for you every day?
I mean, first of all, one of the phrases that's coming in constantly now is eat or heat. That the actual cost of energy now means that a lot of people of my age group are not turning their heating on in their homes, because the actual cost of energy now has soared. It's doubled in price. And one of the clever antics that the government did was that I forget how many prime ministers ago, we've had so many prime ministers recently. There's this famous wall as you walk up the staircase to number 10. All the prime ministers have their own photograph on the wall as you walk up the stairs, from Disraeli onwards. And I swear to God, they haven't even had enough time to put on the former prime minister's photograph before the new one was in as well. There wasn't even a photographer commissioned to take the photograph. You wonder what is going on, but one of their thoughts was that they would put a price cap on this. I get there's an energy problem, of course, and it's a global energy problem as well. But the reality for me is that so you'll have to follow this. This is slightly complicated because we've had so many chancellors of the exchequer, so many prime ministers, that sometimes even I get fooled by who's done what and when. It's a very hard thing to actually sort of talk through. But when Liz Truss became prime minister, after Boris Johnson was thrown out, and before he tried to get back in again, if you follow the drift, this is like
he was a contender for about 4 hours, I think. I remember that.
This is like a melodrama, like you couldn't believe, Anyway, so Kwasi Kwarteng, who was then chosen as Chancellor of the Exchequer, then decided to do this fiscal responsibility package that was kind of and I'm sorry, I'm laughing, but you can either laugh or cry in Britain at the moment, because it's equal emotions. And I think the reality was that it broke the economy, and now we have a 50 billion hole in the economy, following on from this. And British business really at the moment is trying to work out what's happening. So one of the things that we've discovered recently, that the government doesn't govern anymore. The government doesn't govern anymore. It's really the city. You know, whatever happens in the city, that's what the government then decide their policy on. So within a short space of time, basically this whole fiscal review was scrapped. But in the meantime, it had caused 50 billion in a hole in our deficit, and interest rates went soaring up as well. And so we're now, you know, I mean, it teeters around about 4 to 6%, quite honestly. And at one stage, probably about a month ago, for a short space of time, it went up to 9%. And a lot of people who had bought very high-end mortgages in Britain were suddenly starting to think we can't even afford the mortgage anymore.
So, you know, while we're, I kind of want to bring it back to politics, because we've had a similar turn of events here in the States. And because it used to be that you kind of imagined that a politician's job was to be a shepherd or a steward of the economy and not a governor of it, not a master of it. And, you know, but we don't live in that world anymore. We live in a world where everybody's reacting. And we also have this other thing going on in the United States where on a Tuesday, the governor of California, which is the world's 8th largest economy, will announce that all automobiles that are purchased in the state of California by the end of this decade will be electric vehicles. Everyone announces that on a Tuesday. And on a Thursday, he announces that we don't have enough electricity to recharge the electric vehicles in the state. If you have an electric vehicle, please don't plug it in. 2 days later. So when you get those kinds of mixed messages from the people that you entrust your government to, when you're not exactly sure what, when you have to make that eat or heat decision every day. And believe me, I've got friends in the UK that I talk to, when they get on a Zoom call, they're wearing 8 layers of clothing. It's cold now, and it's going to get colder, and everybody's making a decision day to day. And there's a fear of availability too. It's difficult on everybody, but it's particularly difficult on just ordinary people who have to survive this, who have to live through this. Yep. So Liz Truss was in power for 40 some days, I think, right?
Actually, 47 days, I think it was, is the actual number. And you know, I do a political show, you know, on the political show I do on a Monday. It goes across the world. I'm having to try and explain to the world on what is going on, and sometimes I'm thinking this is like a comedy of errors. This is like a Shakespearean farce at the moment, a comedy of errors, because I think the reality is with the politics right now, you know, at one stage, every major business, you know, the CBI, the Confederation of British Industries, you know, the Federation of Small Businesses, a lot of the different organizations were saying, just stick to anything, you know, so we know where we're going, you know, you know, the politicians. You see, the thing for me at the moment, and my argument is, it was their own stupid fault that we now have an extra 50 billion hole, and now we're being expected to pay for it because you know that's the only way to get out of the situation. Now, you know, if a normal corporation was to do something like that, the whole of the board would be fired, you know, by the you know, the investors, you know, and you know, the way things are at the moment in Britain, you know, I think with Jeremy Hunt tomorrow, who is the new Chancellor of the Exchequer, he seems to have got a handle on it. It's what they use this wonderful word now called grip. You know, so if they want to make it sort of sound like it's exciting, to most people it's not, because all they care about is the cost of food and can they exist next week. But they use this word grip now, so they've now got the grip on the economy. I wait to see, Al.
I,
I wait to see.
I don't know whether I'd be reassured hearing that or terrified hearing that, because that it really kind of depends on where the other end of the grip, whatever it is they say they have on the economy, is supposed to be a rational brain that manages all that. And I'm beginning to wonder. And in the United States, I don't think anybody here. We have Republicans versus Democrats, which is kind of like almost like a sporting event, where they counterweigh each other. The Republicans will get in and criticize the Democrats. In your case, this is all intramural battling within the Tory party. It's all inside of the ruling party. And Labor is sitting on the sidelines. I guess they're salivating at the opportunity this represents for them.
Well, there's a 30% lead. I think it's about 34% lead in GOPs at the moment. For the Labour Party to get in at the next election. But that could be back end of 2024, even up to 2025, January 2025. So I think, from that end, but I was watching Prime Minister's Question Time today. We have this regular battle of the giants, every Wednesday in Parliament, and that's part of my watch of having to sort of go through this to see where anything makes any sense. But one of the things that came across today, and you're so right, was that one backbench MP, Conservative MP, said, if you do such and such a thing tomorrow, like cut education or cut money to municipal councils, I will vote against you. Now that is an outstanding thing to say on a day like that, and no doubt that's going to be picked up again, because there are so many factions. The reality within the Conservative government at the moment, there's a lot of right wing within the Conservative government who are cabinet ministers. And basically they've been chosen because they were members of the ERG, the European Research Group, which was the group who wanted Brexit from the start. And so in order to get their vote, because Rishi Sunak, I think at one stage, basically he had to have over 100 votes in order to be nominated. And I get a feeling he was shy of that, slight 2 or 3 shy of that. And he then has talked to the ERG. This is just my take on it. And there's 87 votes. And that 87 votes, I think, added to his 98, something like that. And that's how we got to about 170 that got him into power. But I think that the payback for that then was that he would take on certain people who are members of the RG in order to make sure that their policies are carried out. So Sumela Braverman, who is the Home Secretary, she's the leader of the ERG. Now, 6 days before Rishi Sunak came into power, she resigned because of things that had happened. She'd been sending out emails that were apparently contrary to security regulations. She resigned. 6 days later, she's back in the government. Now, work that one out, for a start. And then we had a case of Gavin Williamson, again, who, allegations had already been made against him, and then he had to resign. It's like, I remember years ago at the start of perestroika in Russia, seeing a play one night in the Bolshoi. And you know what? It follows the same guidelines as what's happening out there now. So perhaps what the Russians, this could be a Russian influence. I have no idea what's going on anymore. Don't call me an expert anymore, because I don't think even know what Britain is doing.
Yeah. Well, Ian, I know you're an expert on a variety of areas. You live in the UK, so that makes you an authority right off the bat, because you're living right in the middle of this insanity that I think we're all experiencing. But you raised a couple of points that I want to pursue with you. One of them is Brexit in particular, because, okay, now you're out. That's it. It's all done. It took a couple of years, and it was a painful experience, but you've been out now for a while. Is the fact that you're not connected anymore to the European Union making this easier or harder?
Well, first of all, we're not out. Because basically at the moment, you see, this is where this misnomer starts. The reality at the moment is that we can't get a governing body in Northern Ireland. And the unionists in Northern Ireland are saying they are not going to go back into power with Sinn Féin until the agreement is sorted out over the border policy that's in the European agreement.
Huh.
So they've refused to do this. And so what this has meant at the moment is that it's a stalemate, quite honestly. You know, and so the reality right now is that we could be pulling Article 14 of the European agreement out, which means we come out of that agreement. And so Brexit is up in the air again. Brexit, I think, has been the worst decision that Britain made in my entire lifetime. I'm a non-Brexiteer. I talk against it constantly, and I think it's the most craziest thing we've ever done.
We had this program on the history of Brexit. I'm fascinated by all things UK because I really do believe that to a large extent, London really is the center of the universe. New York is a great place, but I've always imagined London as kind of the center of civilization. So I look to the UK as kind of a role model for the way civilized society ought to behave. Now, we had a special that we did on Brexit with Benedict Cumberbatch playing the political operative who engineered it, and it was a really compelling, interesting program. And what I remember was kind of a turning point in the interview is they went to go talk to some family that lived somewhere in Brixton, ordinary middle-class people, and who were in favor of Brexit, in favor of it. We're voting to get out. We want out. And they asked them why, and they said, because you're the first people who've ever come to us and asked us what we think. All anybody ever does is try to tell us what to think. And we're tired of it. I really think that I can understand the motivation. I agree with you that Brexit was really poorly engineered. I don't think Cameron, when he was prime minister, how many prime ministers ago was that?
So many.
So down the stairway, he's one of the photos up the stairway a little bit.
Absolutely. He's one of the few with the photograph.
He had to be 100% sure that this referendum was just going to come down in favor of Remain. He had to be. I'm sure he did this just to placate the crazies, what he thought were the crazies, but the crazies ended up prevailing, which is amazing to me. So now you have this half in and half out situation where you're really not out, but you're in. And so you're still exposed to what's going on in Europe as well. And maybe you can summarize that for us. Are they having the same heat or eat problems that you are?
Not so much, no. I don't think, first of all. I mean, we're doing all sorts of things at the moment. You see, basically now, in order to trade with Europe, we go through so much paperwork. Now, one of the promises, you know, our Baron Boris Johnson made, you know, the Baron, of all political dogma, actually said, he made a promise to British business. He said, when we leave, which was 2020, when we leave, he said, if any business is given any piece of European paperwork, tear it up and throw it in the bin. Huh. That was his exact words. That was his advice. And I think, you know, he'd obviously been partying, I think, at that time as well. So you know, perhaps you know, anyway, let's go past that bit. But the reality was that in the end, we were supposed to have had what he called an oven-ready deal. Nonsense. Because even the I forget the name of the Lord, he'll come back to me in a minute, who actually did the Brexit deal, even he said a year later, we only did this deal as an interim just to get it past the post and get to the electorate. And in reality, we knew we were going to have to redefine the deal afterwards. I mean, it's like you wouldn't believe the chaos that these politicians have created in their time. And so now, you know, it's decimated a lot of industries. It's meant for places like Northern Ireland, where a lot of businesses now refuse to send goods to Northern Ireland. So things like groceries and so forth, you know, if there's any issues over, you know, what they contain, they just refuse to do it. And so the shelves of supermarkets in Northern Ireland, you know, are less full of goods at the moment because of this. And when I look at all the different strategies that have happened, you know, it's like, you know, now, for example, you know, when we go to Europe, before, when we used to go into Europe, and I used to go into Europe quite a bit, you would just flash your passport, a British passport, and you were waved through. No problem at all, because you're an EU citizen. Now, we're put into alien third world countries. And so we're queuing up behind everyone else, you know, to get into, you know, Europe at the same time. And I think, you know, we've got to a point where really it was something like about 70% of our business was done with the EU. It's gone. It's gone. You know, and so and it's like, and they were saying things like, well, you know, well, the EU will give us a deal because we spend so much money with them. No, they didn't. So then the question was asked, well, you know, if this is the situation, where do we go? How do we trade? Well, we trade with World Trade Organization, WTO rules. Okay, well, hang on a minute, but WTO rules have their own restrictions anyway. So we haven't got our sovereignty either, you know, so there is no sense to this. It was a political dogma. It was a situation where I think it was almost driven by people, you know, I could have imagined this happening in the 1880s. You know, during Victorian times. This is almost like reclaiming the empire. So look out, America, because we might be attacking you again.
And
we might be another Boston Tea Party, for God's sakes. God knows what we're going to do next.
I could think of a couple of American politicians who'd probably be happy to hand it back to you. So rather than try to run it themselves, they're tired of that. I'm going to ask you in a little bit, I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to maybe keep this in the back of your mind. If Winston Churchill were to be resurrected and brought back, you know, and we're both old enough to remember that personality and what it was like, what he was like. If he were brought back, what would he be saying in the face of everything that's going on today? But before we talk about that, I want you to think about that, because I kind of want to know, if Winston Churchill were alive today, would that be funny or would that be tragic? I guess I kind of want to get a sense of it. But before that, you're a royal expert.
Yeah.
And we now have a change well, we have a major change in the monarchy, where now all of a sudden we've got a King Charles replacing a Queen Elizabeth. Does any of that have any bearing on, it's more uncertainty, but does that have any direct bearing on the economy?
It doesn't as such, because it's known as the Carolean era now, away from the Elizabethan era. So it starts a new era in royal circles. I mean, for me, I hope next year on the coronation date, which I've forgotten for a minute, but on the coronation date, that Americans will come back over, because, you know, we desperately, well, first of all, we desperately need tourists, but then we actually even more desperately need people to actually serve them, you know, and there is this, you know, missing huge group of former East Europeans who would do certainly low paid jobs, you know, you know, would service the you know, the hospitality industry. And they've gone now, you know, so they can't get back in.
So yeah, I know. I mean,
to answer your Churchillian, you know, never in the field of human conflict has so much been owed by so many by so few. I think it's a very apt Churchillian phrase, you know, and I think it's bouncing back across Britain at the moment, because I mean, so few amount of people have caused tremendous hardship to 68 million that there is in Britain today.
Unbelievable. And so if there were a let's say a powerhouse personality eligible to become prime minister, because apparently there's kind of let's say a lack of that kind of leadership. It seems like there's a lot of bureaucrats to choose from, but nobody who can really just sort of take things by the horns and make it work, or anybody who wants to take that risk. Even if Churchill were to come in and start firing people and hiring new people, would that make it better? I mean, is that what's missing?
I think the biggest problem these days is that government is filled with people who come straight out of university and straight into parliament. They've had no experience at all in real life or in business, you know, and so they start off as researchers, you know, then they ingratiate themselves and then become MPs, you know, and then they climb this slippery pole. And you know, the thing that I think is lacking within the government circles right now is a very simple thing called common sense. You know, I'm sure you were taught as well. You know, when I was in primary school and we were told 2 + 2 = 4, you know, that's common sense. You know, the reality at the moment, 2 + 2, you know, in their world is worth about 4 billion. You know, it's we've stopped talking in millions now. We've stopped talking in millions. You know, but now if they're trying to slip something through, they say now, well, you know, it's only going to cost 2 or 3 billion. That's slipping something through. That's slipping something through. You know, and so we're talking billions now, and the reality is that we're over 2 trillion in debt. You know, you know, it's like what they're doing at the moment. I mean, just to use your analogy as well of Churchill, when we came out of the Second World War, we were 6 billion in debt, and it took us, I think, to the early 2000s to pay that debt off. 60 years, roughly 55, 60 years. Now we're 2.2 trillion in debt that is going to be laden at our door forever. And because we're losing our credit, you know, we used to be AAA, now we're down to AA, you know, and so our credit rating across the world, so it's costing us more as well to actually, you know, gain income at the same time, you know, and all of a sudden, you know, I'm thinking, you know, there was a story recently where I think even Biden said, President Biden said, you know, we're almost like a third world country now in UK. You know, I mean, it's just like, and he's probably right, you know, because you know, I mean, you look at our GDP, you look at our, you know, our spending power, we're 6th and 9th, you know, in the world. But in reality, at the moment, that one of the worst statements have come out recently that I'm really concerned about is that with cuts in expenditure to local councils, for example, next year 2 million children could go to school hungry next year
in the United Kingdom, in the UK. In of all places, the center of Western civilization, where nothing like that should ever even be remotely possible, let alone likely.
Absolutely.
It's horrifying. I mean, how could that be? How could we become so impoverished so quickly? And I mean, we're saying the same thing here. It's amazing to us.
You know, and one of the most prevalent and growth industries are food banks. You know, wow. So you know, you know, I was, you know, I created something this year that sometime may be used, and I created a thing called the kindness card. And you know, the government doesn't really want to listen to these things, although it's not going to cost them any money at all. But the kindness card was really going to be offered to people going into food banks, and it would be working with local businesses where they would get a discount, you know, if they had the kindness card with them. Very simple thing, no cost, low cost, you know, operations. And I think, that at the moment, I think out of the box thinking is now required.
And I'm looking at the clock because I know Dr. Jacalyn needs to wrap this program to get ready for another one. So I think we have about 3 or 4 minutes left. But
Okay.
And I want to make sure. I mean, you are one of the most optimistic, positive people I've ever met, and your outlook on the future has always been things will be better. We might have to endure a few difficult things, but things will always be better. And I know that that's kind of your mantra. So I guess I'm asking you, as a lowly American, convince me that things will be better. Tell me that everything is going to be okay, and I'll believe you.
Okay, I think what I'm going to be doing at the moment is, well, first of all, amongst TV channels, I'm trying to group TV channels together and create a United Nations of TV channels that we can be interspersing product, amongst different channels, and really conversing and trying to create business awareness and business opportunities. So I think that is good. I think that the reality at the moment is that the British people and the Americans as well, they've started to see what are the ramifications of political economics right now, and they don't want them anymore. And so, I think there's going to be a period of upheaval, but in the end, people have common sense. You have common sense. You know yourself as well. You know what works and what doesn't. And I think the reality is, yes, there will be a swing back again, quite honestly. But I think we will go through troubled times at the moment. And the more unity that we can create between, and with channels like this as well, where we can actually talk, converse, and exchange ideas on how to actually build business again, how to create opportunities, because there's so many great opportunities out there. I'm working with a tech hub at the moment. 200 young people, all got their own businesses, and they're coming out with some flying ideas. And so, where I want to be is I want us all to communicate, because the world leaders are not good at it. So people like ourselves can actually communicate. We can create opportunities. We can create products. I mean, there's a great product that I've been looking at this week, and it's called Store App. Have a look at it. It's on, and it's a new way of beating Shopify. So all these different ideas that are coming up right now. That there are a lot of very intelligent, highly articulate, highly creative people out there. Let's use them, not abuse them, and I think the world will be a better place as well.
Oh, Ian, I think that's a wonderful sentiment. It's a great way to wrap the program. I know Dr. Jacalyn's listening, even if she can't really directly participate because of technical problems. I hope she hears me when I tell her that I would love to be involved in any kind of a project like that you started, because I think taking back the whole idea of democracy as individual citizens within it is probably the only way we're going to get out of this, because the politicians just don't know what to do. So thank you so much. And it was such a pleasure. Great reconnecting with you, Ian. And
absolutely.
I'll look forward to talking to you again very soon.
Yeah, I'd love to. Take care.
Thank you, Ian. Have a great day. And thanks all of you for joining us for this episode of the Business Talk Show on USA Global TV and Radio, with the one and only wonderful Dr. Jacalyn, who just can't make it at the moment, but we'll be back next Wednesday when things are cleared up, and it'll be the two of us with another great guest. And keep watching USA Global TV and all their programs, because you'll find great personalities like Ian Pelham Turner, making wonderful contributions, communicating, creating that communications network he talked about, where people can just exchange thoughts and ideas and maybe set fire to this common sense movement. Wouldn't that be nice? So, thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and stay tuned for I think it's the Men's Show is coming up next. That's great program, and I've watched it. It's a lot of fun, and thanks for joining.